Tēnā tātou, te hei Māori ora, te nei mihi kauna ki a koutou o te rā ki te kāinga, tēnei te honotanga mai ana ki te ihu o te waka, taunoa mai ana ki te kei o te waka, tēnā te honotanga mai ana ki a matarehua, tō tātou tūpuna ngā toroirangi, ia rātou mā tēnā koutou, a kia ora mai tātou. We were discussing about how to open up our discussion today around our project, and I thought I might start like this. When we first came together and decided that Pātaka Kai was the name of the project, I totally did not like that. And then I thought about it and I thought, no way, Pātaka Kai, everybody has a Pātaka Kai and everybody uses Pātaka Kai. But the more that I started to consider it and think through it, I started to think about what a pātaka is, and then I started to think about what type of kai it is. So I suppose part of the message that we're sharing with you today is that ke whakawhānui ake wena Maramataka mo te pātaka me te kai, ke rapungia wera taonga me te Maramataka, te mātauranga, ke whakaki ki rawa tō pātaka. And that kai sounded a little bit like kai moana, kaiawa, kai mātaitai, and then it started to sound a little bit like kai tiaki, and ko te kai o te rangatira. Me era mea. Now, I've done a 180, I personally think that is a fantastic name. Pātaka Kai Project, and actually truly describes what it's about, don't you think? Nō reira, ka mihi nunui ki tō tātou nei mahi. And to this program, to this project, we'll share some of the beginnings of it. It's another strange thing for us, is that we're at the very beginning of our project. So it seemed a bit unusual to be invited to speak to you about the Pātaka Kai Project when we are truly barely at the beginning. We started off looking at Matariki as a beginning time. We can talk about things to do with Maramataka and so on, but we're just making our start. So, ngā mihi nunu ki a koutou, o te rāki a tātou. Ko wai hoki mātou nei, ko mātou he kohinga mai te ihu o te waka, o te aroa. We come from the coastal end of our waka, out towards Maketu, and the Kaituna River that most of you would probably know flows from Rotoiti all the way through our lands and all the way out at the entrance at Maketu. There's two entrances, Te Tumu, the cut, and the original river mouth at Maketu itself. We call that our wakari o ngā toroirangi. And within that watershed, within that area, we are a collaboration of 5 iwi. And knowing that our river connects all of us from source out to the ocean, and alongside with 4 councils. And the collaboration that we've been doing is in terms of this Pātaka Kai. We whakanui atu tō tātou nei awa, and this phrase says it very clearly, Kaituna he taonga kitea, a sight to behold for us, and it really is quite a large river leading out into the ocean, and many changes have happened with it. But we make up the tribes of Tapuika, of waiata, hei. We include the tribes of Ngāti Whakaueke Maketu, and our neighbours, Ngāti Pikiao and Ngāti Pūkenga, along with those councils that support us in finding he huarahi so that we can activate our kaitiaki and look after our wai. So ngā mihi nunu kia koutou. Kia ora.
Kia ora. As Hemi alluded to, like the centre of our collective universe is the Kaituna River. I mean, that's the awa that connects us. As you can see in the map, we're sort of sandwiched between Lake Rotorua, the coast, Tauranga Moana to the west, Whakatane, Pukehina to the east. Probably the key thing to note, I guess this is not unique to us at all. You know, our awa has been through a lot in the last 160 years. And I think typical for many other lowland river catchments, it's been straightened, flood protection schemes put in. A lot of the lower streams are now nice straight drains. There's pump stations that aren't necessarily fish friendly. And then of course we have a lot of treated wastewater discharges from the Tapuika Township, Rotorua, as well as meatworks as well. So there's a lot happening, and not in a good way. And it's in one of these areas that's been under pressure for a long time, so water takes for urban development, horticulture and intensive farming. And I guess this is a bit of a picture of kind of what it looks like today. This was taken a number of years ago. But the key thing to show is that, you can still see some of the old bends of our river. A lot of our wetlands are lost, and there's a lot of work happening underway now just to try and not only just restore the wetlands, but to recreate what was there. So in a way, we're trying to restore what was lost. And actually, our next speaker, Will, has been heavily involved in some of the wetland work as well.
When we first started to look at what exactly we would like to do, then it seemed really apparent to us that we needed to put our culture at the front, as would be the same as all of you. And those things that we started to explore in terms of what is important and what are the critical parts about this taonga, about our awa, those mangarako. The phrase comes from one of our pātere that talks about the mangarako that flowed down towards the Kaituna River from the hills behind Te Puke. And we realised and discussed these things that our awa and our mangarako, those tributaries and the repo, all through our rohe, taonga to us, and within it, those ideas that was wrapped within those taonga, they also provide us with all of that cultural knowledge, the connection back to our past, those things to do with, and it's been mentioned many times today, around whakapapa and our connections to the history of those who had whakapapa to their place, to our homes, our whakapapa in connection to te kaiawa and to those kōura, tuna, kākahi, to the īnanga and to the wātakirihi, e noho ana kai roto i ngā awa. And also our tikanga and our reo, not just around mahinga kai, although as you would also know, our pūkenga are truly the ones that get into the water, that get out there and go fishing and so on, and the ones that live alongside the awa. But also our reo, and in particular words that are specific to our tribes, to our iwi, and those dialects or those kupu, our whakatauki that allude to those places, and like I said, our pātere and mōtiatia that give us direction about where we might focus our restoration and enhancement efforts. They help us guide there, and then we get out and into the taiao. And of course, for us as kaitiaki and for us as intergenerational kaitiaki, then our rangatiratanga, I've heard mana motu hake and, he atahua hoki te rahuarahi, maybe March on September the 9th. And of course our tūranga waiwai and the connection. So all of it seemed to be really the way we started to wānanga was to focus on connections, on that whakahonohono, and the connection to the kōrero, the connection to the mātauranga, and our connection to each other. So, oranga taia, oranga tangata, tēnā koutou.
And I guess this comes to the, excuse me, the crux of our project. What are we actually doing? What is the work that we've just started? We'll go back to the past first before we come to the present. I think the origins for this originated with the Tapuika Claims Settlement Act, which actually resulted in the establishment of Te Maru Kaituna River Authority in 2014. As Hemi mentioned before, this is, it's co-governance, it's got multiple seats for iwi, so we've got 5 for our iwi entities, as well as 4 seats for our respective councils as well. So 9 seats. The chair of Te Maru is one of our own, which is awesome. And I think that probably the key thing to note, even though it's co-governance with shared decision-making, I think the reality for us is that a lot of the work, the projects, are led by councils. And I think a lot of it has to do, they have people, they've got capacity and resourcing to do work, even though we're keen to be there as well. And they also have large pools of funding. So to an extent, there's an element of disempowerment, I guess, where we want to do more, but we have to constantly look for funding. And I know that's not unique to us, because it's shared across many of us. Okay, so this was when we started the project, when it was initially scoped 2 years ago. We just wanted to look at the long-term dream as restoring the habitats for our taonga fish species. Initially, we were looking at a very simplistic process of assessing where they used to be, through research and our koeke pūkenga interviews, where they are now through monitoring, and where we'd like to prioritise our efforts. So where we want to do, restore our habitats. So we're as Hemi mentioned, we're at the very beginning stage. So acknowledgements to Te Wai Māori for funding our pilot study over the next year, just to get underway and just to test this idea, our methodologies over the next year. And I guess touching on Ruby's presentation earlier is around the key thing for us is getting our whānau connected. So not just connectivity to our, but also to each other. And so that's, I guess, some of the key, I guess that's the dream for us of where we'd like to be.
Kia ora. So Tina said that the councils do a shocking job of their state of environment reports. And for us as a starter, we knew that we needed to know how the ika are getting on, how are the tuna getting on. We're talking things like populations and distribution and so on, and those sort of things. But we also understood that our tikanga implores us to look at the whole picture and implores us to look at the source to the ocean as one connected body, which it is. And we started to feel that we're the same way, that we're connected to all of these other ones, that we all live in that same rohe and that we can operate the same way as well. So whakapiri came up as a major driver in terms of how we move forward. And within that too was a whakapiri, was a whakahonohono to some of those things that can inform us from our own tikanga. And we've only just started, but we've been exploring things like waiata and karakia, whakatauki and the reo within them, and tikanga to do with the wai, and tikanga to do with mahi kai, and tikanga to do even with ourselves in terms of how we might flesh out education along the way. We looked at our pūkenga and our different types of skills that we would need to improve and increase upon, and which included the water analysis and so on, and also explorations in wānanga around tapu and ngā mahi hi, so hinaki and those types of things. And we also looked at our mātauranga in terms of oranga o te taiao, of each of those, someone said whakapapa species, I like that, that's cool, and whakapapa species and their motuhake, their particular habitats and environments, and all of it, I suppose, looking to assist the Māori without trying to say that we're going to fix the Māori. We still have a struggle understanding what is this thing Māori, and it's such a deep and spiritual thing in so many ways, but one of the true essences of it that really sort of highlighted to us is that it's not just the Māori of a particular thing, but the connection that it makes between all of the things and us. We're part of the taiao, so exploring about how we're going to assist the taiao. I'm talking riparian edges, I'm talking about fish passage and so on, and all of those different streams, and how we're going to do that while we uphold the Māori of not only where we're at, but also our whānaus as well. So, with those things in mind, you guys can read the stuff yourself. I finished school ages ago. And so, with all of those things in mind, and some understandings that some of our truer tikanga and our truer ways about getting out there and into the taiao, well, Hirini said, Huria nei e te hau. And that sort of sounds like you have to be out in the hau in order to get pūriad. And so a key part to us was we got to get out there. And we need to carry our whānaus and get out into the environment, get into the awa, get up into the awa, and go out onto the wahapu, onto the estuary and so on, and really get connected. You know what it feels like to get bitten by a tuna or something like that, but actually get out there. So our plan to go and roll that out, and we've talked to Te Maru o Te Wai, who we are conducting it with, and to Te Manu o Te Wai about analysing, dumb word, about feeling, how our Maramataka changes over a complete cycle, from matariki to matariki, checking out how those ika and how those different ones are getting on and so on, and what the numbers are, changes and so on, and then with our research as well, start to compare those tohu coming from the live study to the stuff that we've researched with our whānaus and comparing if climate change and the change in the weather, the change in the temperature, acidification in the oceans and so on, if all of those things are starting to affect up into the awa. And so ko ngā manga rākau refers to our whānaus, but it also refers to those tributaries. And one of the approaches that we've begun to make is to talk to our whānau that live alongside the river and alongside the tributaries. So far we have at least half a dozen who are keen to get active and get involved. And we ask that they have 3 generations of kaitiaki in each whānau. So the kōraua or the kuia and the mokopuna and in between, and then activate a kaitiaki process in that form. We can help to work in terms of learning what to do about scientific monitoring, some simple things around even the sensors and things that they use these days, but we want to get our families in there and work with our kids. And as you can see, we get them up into the rivers. This is up at the Mangorewa, which is halfway in between Rotorua and Te Puke. And in addition to which, we've been working, and it was initiated 5 years ago, where a program was put together to develop an app. And this app is a simple whānau-based questionnaire that only takes maybe 3 or 4 minutes to complete, out on site, and just gives an observation, a simple observation from the whānau, and that can be sent in or pinged into a central base, the server. And we've talked to our kura kaupapa. We have another advantage in our team that we've got together to do the monitoring and to get up there and do observations. We have 100% reo speakers. So, haere ana mātou nei roti ngā kura kaupapa, te tehi, te kura kaupapa o te kāinga, nā te whakahāpai ake wā tātou tamariki. And the kura has also, they're so keen, they're keen to activate the app. They've got a space down by the river, and they're going to start monitoring as an observation on a daily basis. We want to teach hou iko, so ka timata mai ngā whetū, heke mai raki te ihorangi me ngā kapua, nā ka heke iho i te ua ki nā te maunga me te reringa mai o ngā wai, mai ngā maunga puta noa atu ki te moana. And that's one thing, isn't it? So we're going to teach one thing. Very, very slowly. But the point of it really is that so many of our projects, they kick off with a hiss and a roar, and everybody, 200 people come to the first wānanga, and then there were 40, and then there were 6. Same 6, they were my family. But they have to come, No pudding for you, not anyway. So with the same thing, quite often a lot of projects, even if they're well-intended and really quite worthwhile projects and programs, they have a stop point. And they don't always last. Sometimes funding goes, contestable funding, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And so our true aim is to have it in perpetuum, to really let it continue, which is why we're talking 3 generations of kaitiaki in a whānau. That whānau is then the repository and the safeguard, the pātaka of their mātauranga. So we can help them to assist to collect and to collate all the mātauranga, but they hold the mātauranga, they hold the archive, and they decide if they want to, what they would like to share or if they want to share. And that way it seems like a really good way to chop IP in the head, because it truly is sitting with the whānau that it belongs to. Because, you know, like you fellas, our Maramataka was passed down from kōro and so on, and it comes down a whānau. And that's like, it might be different than the neighbour's one and stuff like that, but there's your whānau's one, and we'd like to keep that go alive. There are many other things I could talk to you about, we could talk to you about, sorry, Elva.
So just to note, we've already got the red numbers coming up, and we've only got a few more slides. But as you can see, it goes from when you initially scope a project and you think it's really straightforward and your output's a monitoring plan and a restoration plan. And then the reality hits where you actually want something that is long-lasting, as Hemi mentioned. And so you need to be quite adaptive with your projects, knowing that, you know, if it needs to go wider, that's okay. And if you need to go slower, that's okay as well. And I think recognising the intergenerational, the need for the intergenerational connection just highlights that this is part of revitalising tikanga and culture and deal. I guess this picture shows just the importance of bringing the kids out. I mean, our chair, Te Kaunaku, Dean Flavel, these are his photos from a few weeks ago, just taking out his daughter and granddaughter out to harvest kaiawa or supplejack to create hinaki. And so this is more than just a project to our whānau. This is part of our livelihoods. So there's always that tension between the project outcomes and then the doui, I guess, the long-term doui. I think this touches on the school stuff that you talked about, so I'll skip that one.
Yeah, kia ora. So just to wind up a little bit of that stuff, with the Maramataka, then what we are doing with our team, as opposed to, we've worked with the kids and worked with our whānaus as well about understandings and so on. We all know so much about Maramataka and matariki and so on these days, but they do help to guide us, so we took them as the guide. And those stars that indicate the seasons and things, the months that are coming through, we take them as our guide to indicate which moons we would like to follow and what cycles we'd like to follow in terms of our research and our monitoring. And with that in mind, we started to look at high activity days. You know, I'm sure a lot of you know different things about the Maramataka, but days like o unuku, those tamatea days, things like the tangaroa days, and then days to chill out when it gets closer to mutu whenua and so on. Well, we've timed them out so that we can get active and get out there into the water, on the water, and do our process throughout the whole Maramataka in line with it. It makes it really hard because, as you probably know, sometimes that's on a Saturday. And sometimes the Maramataka says, you need to go out and set your hinaki at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Monday night or a Sunday night and da-da-da-da and so on and so on. And then you need to pull it back in by such and such. And yeah, it is hard, but it's good fun. It is. And one of the other whakaaro we had, because, you know, obviously a lot of the critters are night critters, as in get out there and do our monitoring and checking things out with spotlighting and so on and that sort of stuff. Well, one of the whakaaro we had was to acquire stand-up paddleboards. So we cut the carbon footprint and so on and paddle our river, but also do dawn and do nighttime paddles so that we can actually make gauges, because those tikanga things that we were talking on really look at, I suppose this is a message, look at the balances of te taiao, mai rangi kia papa, and those balances in things in between, mai tāne kia hine and those balances and things. Ora me te mate, ira atua, ira tangata, a solid core for all of the stuff we do, later on mana atua, mana o tūroa, mana whenua, or mana moana, mana tangata and mana reo. And the balances between te ao me te pō, and starting to treasure the night time as well. And you know, it seems like, especially our next generations are a bit scared of the dark, and our last generations lived in the dark. So, just like eating kinners, some of the tikanga's gone out the door. The kids are like, ugh, yeah. Anyway, kia ora tātou. Do you have anything else?